Alrighty, hello and welcome to lesson 4 of Last Epoch University. On lesson 3 we covered gear slash itemization slash loot, and it only makes sense that after we've covered what loot looks like and how it generally works and what you can expect, to then cover how to more efficiently search for the gear you want and not be stuck with the gear you don't, because in this game, well, loot explosions do happen. It's not PoE level of loot explosions, but there's definitely times where you can get lots and lots of loot. And if you didn't have a loot filter on, you can get very tired of looking at all the loot on the ground all the time. So the best way to handle that is by filtering out the things you don't want. And fortunately, Last Epoch has an excellent loot filter, so they make it relatively easy to do so. So we're going to cover all the basics of loot filter. This is actually pretty comprehensive on how the loot filter works. You should know pretty much everything you need to know to make your own loot filter, or if you want to download someone else's loot filter, by the end of this, you should be good to go as far as that. So let's go ahead and get into it. Oops, too far. All right, let's start with what is loot filter. So the loot filter is a way to filter out items that don't fit your criteria. For example, maybe an item is too low level, has the wrong affixes, is an undesirable rarity like common items, or anything else that you might want to filter out. It is also a way to highlight items that you don't want to miss. For example, particularly rare affixes that are very important for your build, high tiers in an item, valuable idols, or again, anything else that you might want to make sure you don't miss. How does LE's loot filter compare to PoE's though? As any of you who've played PoE know, they have a pretty extensive filter. But this one is quite different. For one, it is much easier to make your own. There is actually an in-game interface to do so in Last Epoch. The UI is relatively easy to use, and the rules are relatively easy to grasp. So if you've been a PoE player, very few of you probably have ever made your own loot filter. You probably use Filterblade or some other website, because it's so complex and so difficult to manage. But here, you can do that if you want to. That's absolutely an option. Or you can just choose to make your own, and it really won't take that long. It's also easier to design build-specific filters. So in PoE, oftentimes people, while you can build specific filters, will just use a more generic filter that is relatively strict, but will drop a lot of things that are not for your build. Whereas in LE, you can make loot filters that are very much for your build, that filter out anything that doesn't fit. Filters are also easy to change on the fly. You can actually go in and change your filter as you're leveling, as you get to a certain stage. Maybe you've got a best in slot for a particular gear slot. You don't want to look for that anymore. You can do that. Whatever it might be, you can change it as you go. You don't have to worry about it being kind of solid or solidified in a way that's very difficult to work with. Yeah, let's turn on the light. Good idea, Dakota. Some disadvantages from PoEs. There are currently no custom sounds. In fact, there are no audio options whatsoever in the current loot filter. So if you want like a special sound when you have an exalted that drops, I'm sorry, but currently that is not available to you. Visual customization is also quite a bit more limited. There are only so many options for like colorization and making it larger or smaller. In fact, the only option that is available for larger or smaller is currently bugged. We'll cover that later. You can't filter shards slash glyphs slash runes, the crafting materials, which are the closest equivalent to PoE's currency. And as you know, you can filter PoE's currency. This isn't as important for LE because the vast majority of the time you're going to want all the shards, glyphs, and runes anyway. There is much less reason to filter those things out, so it's not that big of a deal, but it is a limitation that the system currently has. Now, some of these disadvantages may be addressed by 1.0. In fact, several of them I expect probably will be, like visual customization. And I do hope they get custom sounds in. But we'll just have to wait and see. What if you don't want to make your own filter? What if you'd rather use somebody else's and not have to deal with it? Filters can be exported into a downloadable format, and many build guides do include a loot filter with them, so you can just use those filters for your own build. There are also some basic loot filters in the forums that can be further customized. A very popular one is Heavy's casual loot filters. They are designed, I believe, for specific classes, but that's as far as they go. They are not designed for specific builds, but they are very customizable on their own, and they give you a good starting place if you would like to not start from scratch. I will also link that link for Heavy's casual loot filter in the description. You should be able to see it there. If I haven't, please let me know. How do you add a filter from somebody else if you don't want to make your own. It's really easy. First off, you download the filter from whatever source you want to. Like if you go to the last Epoch forum there and download heavies, you just click on a button. It downloads straight to your download folder. From there, you go into your loot filter with Shift F, which we'll also cover. You are going to go into this little plus here, or you might have an export or an import button down here, depending on if you don't have one clicked. So if I have no filter on here, I'll see import filter here. So I can do it there, or I can do the plus sign. From there, if I want to import an existing loot filter, I will just open filter folder, like so. This will open up my loot filter folder, and from here, I just drag and drop that filter I downloaded into this area, and it will immediately load into the loot filter, and I'll immediately be able to see it in my list here and begin using it. Very simple. What if you want to make your own filter? What if you have a particular build that you're making, or you just like the idea of making your own filter, or whatever it might be? Instead of using someone else's, you'd like to make your own. How do you do that? This will be a little bit more complex, but it's really not too bad. It should take us not too terribly long to go through this, and I will be covering all the details of it. First thing you need to do is you need to actually create the filter that you're going to be working from. To do so, you will again open the filter screen by pressing Shift F. You can either choose create a filter down here or the plus sign. They'll both do the same thing. Then you click create new filter. From here, you'll have your configure loot filter window open. You'll put in a title, example loot filter in this case. You can put a description if you want to. You'll choose a color. Let's choose this one. And if you want a filter icon, you can have that too. Let's choose the sword. You click confirm, and boom, you now have your example loot filter set up. Let's talk about navigating the filter, because there are a good number of options in here. We'll start with all the stuff on the main page. There's this drop down here that lets you choose your filters. If you have none currently in your drop down, you just have no filter as an option. As soon as you start putting them in, you will get a bunch of options. You just click on them and you can change. You have edit over here, which just brings you back to the loot filter creation screen, where you can make changes to that section. So the description, icon color, icon, the name of the filter. You have a duplicate button, which is actually very handy, where you literally duplicate the filter, and this will allow you to create a copy of it, of which you can use as a template if you like. I have a template filter in mine, where it has all the basic ideas, basic parameters and rules down that I want to customize for each build. I just duplicate that, and all of my rules are already set in place, and then I just work within those rules to make my new filter. You have the add rule button here, and the question mark button, which is just gives you some ideas of how it works. Add rules lets you put all these rules in that are in the descriptions down here. We have delete filter and export filter. Export is for, of course, if you want to pass it on to somebody else or just save it somewhere else. And then delete is, where's my example? I need to be on my example. Actually, let's delete this one. Delete filter, we'll just get rid of it. Simple as that. Back to example. Example, boom, okay. All right, let's start looking into making our actual filter and adding some rules to it. How do we do that? First thing we'll do is click add rule. You can see you have a maximum of 75 rules you can add. It's a lot. Click on that and you now get to edit a new rule. Your new rule shows up right here in your list of rules. Here are your options. You start with visibility. You have show, you have hide and recolor. You have the emphasize button, which you should currently not use. It is bugged. It will actually cause things to not show up properly. So unfortunately, we have to forego this one for now, but eventually it'll work. Character level dependency, and we have this add condition option. Okay, what does all this mean? What are all these options we have? Start with visibility. The visibility is like the base idea of your rule. So you have show, you have hide, and recolor. You raising your hand. Oh, you have to use the bathroom. Okay, Dakota, go ahead and use the bathroom. Yeah, you should definitely use the bathroom if you have to. Yeah, you definitely don't have to wait here. Fortunately for you, it'll be on YouTube. You can check it out later. So show is if you want a particular affix or whatever, affix, gear, whatever conditions you choose, to actually show up in the world. We want to make sure this thing does not get hidden by any of the rules. You'll use show. Hide will do the opposite. It will actually hide any items that you don't want to see. And recolor is actually a combination of two visibility rules. It is a de facto show, so if you put anything as recolor, it will show, and then it will change the color of that label for that particular item to whatever color you select. So you can more easily color code the things in the ground, determine whether or not something is something you want to look at. Emphasize, as I mentioned, does not work right now. It is bugged, but what it does do when it's working is it makes it a little bit larger for the label, so you can see it a little bit easier. And then character level dependency is a weird one. Why am I moving instead of clicking? There we go. Character level dependency will cause this rule to only be active between the selected character levels. So let's say you select 20 to 50. That means you will only see this rule in action upon the gear that you're dropping in the world when your character is within level 20 to 50. So if you are level 18, it is not active. If you're level 51, it is not active. If you're level 37, it is in fact active. An add condition is really the meat and potato of the system. So let's say we choose hide in here, we add condition. It's going to give us a drop down of options of what we want to hide. If we chose show, it would be a drop down option of what we want to show. They'll be the same options in here. All right, let's cover what those options are. Make sure I'm not missing anything in here. Yep, we're in the right spot. Perfect. We have a fix, class requirement, level, rarity, item type, and none. None is pretty self-explanatory. If we choose a fix, and we choose a fixes, we are going to get a list of literally every affix that currently exists in the game, and there are a lot of them. And from here, we can choose what affix is. In this case, we'd want to hide because we chose visibility as hide. So we don't want to see any item that drops this particular item with this particular affix on it. We can choose multiple, so we can go in here and choose all attributes, attunement, dexterity. Or we can get even crazier and choose every single one by clicking on this box up here. We have a lot of flexibility in how we interact with this particular area. We can also search. Let's say I want to search for dexterity. There it is. Let's search for something more generic. Health. Here's all of the affixes that have health on them. We hit the drop down. We can see everything that has something to do with health. We also have tier as an option in here. So let's say we chose, just pick something kind of at random, melee cold damage. We want to hide melee cold damage. We want to only hide it if it falls within certain tiers. So we have any, which means any tier, doesn't matter. If it shows up, we want to see it. We have equal, which is a very specific tier. So this is a weird one. You probably would only use for maybe like tier 5s. But anything you want, you can put in here. So let's say I wanted to only see melee cold damage affixes dropping in items when that melee cold damage is tier 1. I can do that. I don't know why I would, but I could do that. I also have less. So let's say it's less than tier 3. So I only see tier 1 or tier 2. Less or equal. In this case, I'd be seeing tier 3, tier 2, or tier 1. Anything up to or below 3 is less or equal. More, if I put more in here with 3 in there, I would only see tier 4 and tier 5. Or more or equal would show me tier 3, tier 4, or tier 5. Okay, class requirement. You choose this one, you're going to get a list of all of the classes there are 5 of. And you can choose 1 or more. So if I chose Primalist and Mage, this rule would hide any items that are Primalist or Mage specific. Not any item that a Primalist or Mage can wear, because that would be a whole lot of things. Only if it's specific to the Mage. So like an idol that is for Mages will not show here. Or a helmet for Primalist would not show if I selected this. Level should also be fairly obvious, but there's several options we can do in here. This is also somewhat similar to character level dependency, but it's actually level based instead of character based. So let's say we want to see only items that drop below with a level on them of 10 or below. We would actually choose 11 in this case, and that would be 10 or below. Above level, so anything above 10, we would choose 10. Max level below character level is an interesting one. In this particular case, if we click on this and we say, let's see, max level below character level, and we choose 10, this is only going to show us any items that are no lower in level than our character's level. Well, no lower than 10 levels below our character's level. So let's say our character is level 80, and we select this and put 10 in there. We won't see anything below level 70 as far as an item goes. The item will have to be level 70 or higher for us to see it. And the last one is highest usable level. This is a really weird one to kind of grasp what highest usable level is doing. And my understanding of how this works is, let's say if you chose an item that, let's say you chose axes and you put this in there as highest usable level, you'd see the highest usable axe only. Or actually, in this case, you'd be hiding the highest usable axe. You probably want this more for show, but you'd be hiding the highest usable axe. This is a very like weird rule that I've never found a use for. But maybe someone out there has a use for it. I kind of do it myself. I want like higher tier stuff because I want more control over it. Okay, rarity is going to work on normal, magic, rare, exalted, unique, and set. So it's all of your rarity types. We covered these last lesson. And this one also can be selected multiple. So in this case, we'd be hiding all normal, magic, and rare items if we selected that. Assuming this is the only rule in our rule set. And there's two more. Item type is going to actually be base type items. So two-handed weapons, one-handed axe, one-handed mace, one-handed scepter, one sword, so on and so forth. You can select multiple of these as well. So let's say I want to hide daggers, wands, and scepters. I can do that. Done. Now, there's a bit of a quirk with this one. So if we select all three, or if we, like we just did there, scepters, wands, and daggers, subtype you can see is grayed out. I can't click on this. Gone. But if I select only one, scepters, then my subtype options opens up, and I'll actually get a list of all of the scepters that currently exist in the game. From here, I can select them individually if I want to. So if I want to hide all the low-level scepters, I can do that. Every subtype in the game, every item exists. You can just only see one at a time in this rule for whatever reason. I don't know why you can't do scepters and wands, for example, and then have like a scepter one here and then a wand here and then click and choose. But currently that functionality does not exist. So if you want to go in and you want to do every like item type and turn off certain items, like again, like I want to turn off like the lowest 3 of all weapon types. You have to do that individually. So you have to have a rule to hide scepters, then the subtypes, all 3. You have to have a rule for wands, and all 3. It's kind of a pain, but that's how it currently works. Okay, and the last one is none, and well, that just isn't a condition, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. I think that, yep, that's all for that page. Actually, we've moved on. We've done even further, but okay. Now let's go to one thing I didn't show here. You can actually add multiple types. So let's say we want to let's do something like a lot more complex. Let's say we want to hide. Now let's do a show. Let's do show this time. We want to show all affixes, or not all affixes, all items with the affix. What's a good one? Let's say either melee crit, melee attack speed, or melee fin. But we're gonna add another condition which says also, or and, the item must be a two-handed axe. And that two-handed axe must be either a steel axe or a kraken beak, the two highest ones. So in this particular scenario, what I've done is I've added 2 rules, of which they both must be true in order for this loot filter to show me that item, for this rule to kick in. So it must be the case that the item has at least one of those 3 affixes, the melee fizz, the melee crit, or the attack speed. And it must either be a Kraken beak or a steel axe. If either of those conditions are not met, then this rule does not count. It does not go into effect. You cannot do an or. Like, a lot of people like to be like, okay, I want to see something that has these affixes, or like another affix one here, or these affixes. There's currently no functionality for that. You can only do and functions where all conditions must be met. So bear that in mind if you try to do multiple conditions. You're actually creating a stricter rule. You can't create a rule that gives you more flexibility at the moment. Hopefully that does change. Okay. How do you modify an existing rule? This is pretty easy. Let's create this rule here. So we created this rule. Now have show all items with 3 affixes. We click on it in this list here. Let's make a second rule just to give us something to look at. Rarity, rare. We want to modify this one. Click on it, and it just opens up the edit rule, and we just do what we were doing before. Click or create a new rule. You can also move these, by the way. We'll get into that a little bit more. That's another way you can modify the rule, by changing its order. Okay, how do you delete or turn off a rule? These are pretty easy as well. Go in here, there's this little X here. It might be hard to see, and let's hover over it, and then it's kind of red. If I go in here and I click the X, the rule's gone. What if I want to turn it off for now, but not get rid of it? Like, maybe I want to turn it back on later. And just click this checkbox here, and now this rule is no longer on. It will no longer be in effect. And go back here anytime and just checkmark it back on. Want to see it again. Okay, let's talk about rule priority logic. This is really important. This is where a lot of people go wrong with the loot filter. The rules can be reordered in the rule set by dragging and dropping. We showed that earlier. So let me create another rule here. Create a couple of rules. Let's do a hide rule here. No, let's do a show rule. Show rule. Fixes. Sure, throwing attack speed. And let's do this. Let's actually put it this way. So yeah, you can see I can actually move these around, right? I can change the order at which they're in. I can put rare on top, or I can put throwing attack speed on top. And I can do that no matter how many rules are in there. I can drag them to wherever I want to. This is really important because rules at the top take priority over rules below. So if you have a rule on top, it is the most important rule as far as the game is concerned, and it will look at that rule first. And if anything happens to that rule, it will override anything that would contradict it below. So for example, let's say you have a top rule that hides all the pole arms, hides every pole arm. You have a rule underneath that shows all pole arms with a tier 3 or higher affix. The top rule is going to override the lower rule, and the top rule says all pole arms are hidden, and so therefore even the items that have a tier 3 or higher affix that are pole arms still do not show, because the top rule takes precedent over the bottom rule. Really easy thing to fix though, just reverse the rules, have the tier 3 plus pole arms on top, and then you will always see the tier 3 or higher affixed pole arms, and you will hide all of the others, because any that don't fit the first rule will then drop to the second rule. So it'll check the first rule and says, okay, is this a tier 3 plus pole arm? Yes, we'll see it. No, okay, go down to the next rule. Next rule says hide all pole arms. Okay, hide this pole arm. So for an example here, we have the throwing attack speed and the hide all rare. So if I had them listed like this, I have hide all rare items on top and show all items with throwing attack speed on the bottom. If it's a rare item, it's hidden, even if it's got throwing attack speed. If it's not a rare item, then it checks here, and then it'll show if it's got throwing attack speed. I switch these over. Now, even if it's a rare item and it's got throwing attack speed, I'll see it. Hope that makes sense. It's a little bit complicated. It's like a little bit sometimes hard to grasp. But once you get it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's easy. Okay. Let's talk about some basic strategy for making your loot filter. So here's generally how I start my filters. The first thing I do is I set hide rules, or the first thing you need to do is set hide rules below show rules and recolor rules. So, as we're talking about here, let's actually change this up. Let's make this a hide all normal magic and rare items. So this is going to kick in if no rules ahead of it or on top of it are activated. So in this particular case, we only had these two rules. The loot filter would look and say, okay, is there a throwing attack speed item on the ground? No. Okay, what do I do next? Hide all normal magic rare. Is it a normal magic rare item? Say it is. Say it's a magic item. It's now hidden. Fortunately, I can make this a lot more flexible. I can add a lot more things here. Let's say I want all the throwing stuff on here. All throwing stuff on here. Boom. And now anytime anything that's got throwing on it is on the ground, I'll see it. Even with this rule underneath it, because this rule is on the bottom and this one is activated first. So the lowest rule can be a catch-all for unwanted items, just like I put there. Normal magic rare, hide all normal magic rare on the bottom of your loot filter is a catch-all. Anything that is not picked up by your show rules at the top or above it will be hidden. Above rules show the wanted items, show all of these affixes I want with at least this many tiers, or show all axes and swords. Any of those rules above that first rule, and it's on the bottom, will allow you to see the things that you want to see. Now you can get a little bit more advanced, a little bit stricter with this, and add another sort of layer to the loot filter. So let's say, for example, we've got this loot filter here with the normal magic rare already. We've got the 4 affixes that are being shown. But let's say I don't really want to, I want to see those 4 affixes, but only on certain items, right? I don't want to see every single item that's got these throwing attack options on them. Like, let's change that. Let's just make it a little simpler. Let's not make a throwing attack. Let's make it melee. All right, let's say I want melee physical damage, melee critical strike again, and melee attack speed. All right, those are the things that are for my melee build that I need to see, but I don't need to see them on every single weapon type because I'm only going to use certain weapons. Let's say I only want to use axes, and there's only like the higher level axes that I want to see. Okay, we're going to make 2 rules now. So we're going to make a rule that says hide. We're going to hide anything that's not an axe because we're only using axes. So we're going to hide, we're going to use one-handed axes. We're going to hide all non-one-handed axes, and we're going to hide all two-handed weapons because neither of those are going to fit our criteria. We need axes only. Okay, so now we'll only see the items with these melee affixes if they are axes, as far as weapons go, because we turned off all the other weapons. But let's say I also want to see only the certain axes, right? Only those like top tier axes. I don't want to see all the bottom tier axes. So we go back in here, we do another hide roll. And this time we're going to do still item type. We're going to select the axes. And then we're going to do a subtype, and we're going to select all the axes we don't want to see. So we're going to hide all of these axes here. And we're going to keep Raider axe and Well-Run axe. So now it's going to hide everything that's not Raider and Well-Run axe. And so what we've done now, we said, okay, if you're not an axe, you're a weapon that's not an axe, we don't want to see you. And if you are an axe, but you're not one of the top 2 axes, we also don't want to see you. So if an axe drops on the ground, or if a weapon drops on the ground, it doesn't fit the criteria of being one of those 2 top tier axes. If it's an axe but not one of those top 2, it gets hidden right here and it's done. You just hide it. And if it's not an axe at all, it's like a staff, this one will hide it. Now if it is one of the top 2 axes, it will then get picked up here, which will show any of those axes that have one of those 3 melee stats that we wanted, either melee fizz, melee crit, melee attack speed. If it doesn't have one of those 3, it's one of those 2 main axes. It didn't get hidden from this, right? It didn't get hidden from this. It wasn't explicitly shown by this. And it's going to be, assuming it's not exalted or unique, it's going to be a normal magic or rare item, and so this will then hide it. And so in this scenario, you're only going to see the top 2 axes, one-handed axes, with one of those 3 affixes. It's going to happen. So that's how you make it even more strict as far as making sure you see only the particular items that you want with the right bases and with the right affixes. I actually think I use a very similar... Yeah, I use a very similar idea in here. Yeah, so put more specific hide rules above show rules. For example, I want melee fizz axes, but only if they are level 55 plus in this particular case. So you add melee fizz to show a fixed list, and you make a new rule above it that hides all axe subtypes that aren't level 55 plus. you want a deeper dive on how to do like the more advanced strategy, I actually go through in how I make my loot filters, a guide, exactly how to make a filter the way that I do, step by step. And so definitely check out that video if you want more information how to do it. Do bear in mind that there are a lot of different ways to make these loot filters. This is the way that I like to do it. It provides me with a lot of flexibility. I can go in and I can change things as I want to. I can turn on and turn off items that I don't want to see at any given time or do want to see. Same thing with the fixes. So I really like the flexibility this offers, but there are other people who do it differently. If you don't like this way, feel free to check out other ways people make these filters, because there really are quite a few ways you can make them. All right, that's everything. I will now be taking questions from chat. For everyone on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. I really hope this guide was helpful to you for how to make your own loot filter. If you would like to ask questions, feel free to do so in the YouTube comment section. I'll definitely answer them. Also, you can feel free to join us on Twitch, where you can ask questions in real time. I'm streaming 5 to 6 days a week. And I also have a Discord where you can ask questions as well, if you'd like to do it there. The Twitch and Discord links will be available in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great time in Last Epoch, and I'll see you all again real soon.